Hello and welcome. You're watching Oneindia News. This is Global Chit Chat, our weekly show where we speak about the top developments in the geopolitical spectrum in the recent weeks with our expert and our guest, Mr. Tridivesh Singh Maini. Hello, sir.
Hi, hi.
So let's just dive right into it. As you know, the Nancy Pelosi's visit in Taiwan has caused quite a stir in China as well as in Taiwan and in South Asian countries as well. So Pelosi's visit has delighted the people of Taiwan, but that then again, the people of South Asian countries, they are quite agitated, and also they are, let's just say, scared about how China is going to react regarding this entire visit. So, what do you think China is actually going to do regarding this? Do you really think that China is going to take a step and create a stir or actually invade Taiwan like it's planning to?
Okay, so as you know, obviously we've been over the past couple of days, we've seen the military exercises
Right.
around the Taiwan Strait. We've seen the
Hmm.
fact that the Chinese planes have crossed the median, what is called the median line, right?
Hmm.
As I said, there's talk about the imposition of sanctions on Taiwanese
Hmm.
goods.
And I think they have already, I think China has imposed some sanctions on China as, yeah. Yeah.
And further,
Hmm.
I mean,
Hmm.
basically, one is the symbolic messaging, and maybe even stronger ones. And then also, I mean, what is worrying everyone is any sort of, a sort of blockade, you know, uh,
Hmm.
so which basically means that that China will establish, the maritime air jurisdiction. So which means a
Right.
sort of blockade. So that
Hmm.
is the one of the apprehensions when one looks at it from the point of view of the global economy as well, not just the tussle between Taiwan and China. So obviously there are going to be strong repercussions. And see, China may not take as extreme a stand. So there may
Hmm.
be a difference between the way she reacts to this situation
Right.
uh, as opposed to a leader like Putin, you know.
Right.
And because China also has its domestic challenges, but China would also not like to be seen as weak and just
Right.
sort of twiddling its thumbs and doing nothing. So
Hmm.
you already have, I mean, if you look at the military exercises, if you look at the messaging in that sense, if you look at the economic messaging, uh, the sanctions which have been imposed and likelihood of further sanctions,
Hmm.
all that is there. Now,
Hmm.
the worry is also, as you very rightly pointed out, Southeast Asian nations,
Hmm.
ASEAN nations, for instance, which have been balancing out, which, I
Hmm.
mean, so apart from obviously Japan has taken a strong stance, and predictably it's gone along with the US. But you have had
Hmm.
countries within ASEAN which have so far
Hmm.
been, balancing between the US and China, and
Right.
obviously the repercussions of this of Pelosi's visit will be felt in Asia, and ASEAN countries are worried about how China will react to this, because again there are two factors. One is the economic aspect. There could be a major disruption
Right.
in, again, in supply chains and things like that. That's the first thing. The second is, I mean, if you look at ASEAN itself, I mean, how uh, if you look at the economy of East Asia, Southeast Asia, Taiwan obviously plays an important role, right?
Hmm.
So especially in certain things like your some of these chips, raw materials
Hmm.
for information technology, and so on and so forth.
Hmm.
So that would be a major disruption. And then,
Right.
of course, the geopolitical part, as it is, countries have been insecure over the last
Hmm.
couple of years as the US-China relationship has moved downward.
Hmm.
There have been growing insecurities. So there is a host of issues, and it's not only about Taiwan and China, as you very rightly pointed out, ASEAN
Right.
and even other parts of Asia, even if you look at the broader Asian context, and like Ukraine, I mean,
Hmm.
obviously there the manifestation was different. Here also the economic supply, the global supply chains
Hmm.
could be disrupted because now in recent years, just as you have I mean, gas is obviously an important raw material. When you look at
Right.
technology, when you look at IT, so things like chips, IT chips, all these things, they are very important. They're important raw materials. And if there's any disturbance in that, that will, as in the past couple of months, because of even the restrictions in China, the global supply chain of uh, commodities of gadgets and all has got impacted. So that will
Hmm.
also be there. Apart from Now the geopolitical part will pan out. All, as I said, China has already taken some strong steps. Now over the next few days, it remains to be seen whether the US does some balancing. But there is no way that Beijing is not going to take some further steps to send out a message at least that it won't take this line.
Hmm.
Right, right. And can you speak about this entire scenario from the Indian context? Because what is India's stance on the entire One China policy, and what do you think that if actually China happens to take some, let's say, irrational step, what do you think it's gonna be from our point of view? What do you think it's gonna happen for India?
It cannot really alter its
Hmm.
adherence to the one China policy, even though there are tensions and everything else.
Hmm.
There would, no country would want to upset the
Hmm.
geopolitical apple cart further than what is
Hmm.
happening already, right? So
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
is not going to happen. But yes,
Hmm.
you can also criticize. You can be critical of the invasion. You can be
Hmm.
critical of aggression. You can always do that. And India has been opening up to
Hmm.
Taiwan in different ways, even in the economic sphere, even in terms of political engagement. So that all
Hmm.
has been happening. But I don't see India, doing the same. Obviously, you're not going to take as drastic a step as the US. And again, this would be a chance for India to show that while opposing Chinese aggression, it can take an independent foreign policy stance, seeing its own
Hmm.
economic interests and seeing
Hmm.
its own geopolitical
Hmm.
interest, given its geographic, given its location and everything.
Mhm, mhm. Right, right. So coming a little further down to the eastern part of India, let's talk about Bangladesh. It is seeking assistance from the World Bank and Asian Development Bank amid efforts to bolster its foreign exchange reserves, right? And also, this request comes after the government bought a loan from the IMF. So, can you just tell me what exactly is it like a preemptive measure, or is Bangladesh going through some sort of a crisis right now? What exactly is happening there?
See, first of all, I think in terms of political messaging, Bangladesh needs to be lauded, unlike other South Asian nations, which delayed going to the IMF because of positioning or because of the fact that they didn't want to rub China the wrong way. I mean,
Right.
a perfect example of that is Sri Lanka, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So Bangladesh has close relations with China, and in fact,
Hmm.
the Chinese foreign minister is going to be there in Bangladesh on the weekend. But Bangladesh has been balancing out its foreign policy, right?
Hmm.
So that is one part of it. Now, like other countries, Bangladesh, first of all, it had a post-COVID,
Hmm.
its exports got impacted,
Right.
and post the Ukraine crisis, obviously the import bill has gone up, especially
Hmm.
of gas, specifically of gas and many other commodities. So what do you have? You have a dip in foreign
Hmm.
exchange reserves, and you have a trade deficit, right? So Bangladesh has sensed that, and it is going. Basically, it is looking to about $4.5 billion from the IMF in terms of assistance, and this will be to deal with the current crisis, and also there is a program in the IMF which also looks at other issues like climate change. So far, Bangladesh has said that we will only seek assist, go ahead with this if the program suits us. I mean and Bangladesh is also the IMF has also so far. I think they're in initial talks, but I think the important part is about how because what has happened is as countries have moved closer to China, there has been
Hmm.
this uh, reactive anti-Western rhetoric, which results in criticism, obvious and justifiable criticism of
Hmm.
Western multilateral institutions. Not that they don't deserve the flag, but what often happens is you overlook the Chinese model of economic engagement and its pitfalls. So every country then naturally has to balance out. So Bangladesh has done that. I think to some extent you can say it's a preemptive measure, but I think
Hmm.
it's a very bold step as well. I mean, obviously,
Right.
they are sending out the right message by saying that we'll see our own interests, but they are not posturing. They are not saying that we're not going to go to the IMF. Uh,
Hmm.
they Bangladesh is actually seeing, and it has sensed that there is this foreign exchange crisis. There is a trade deficit, so they're not waiting in that sense. So I think they've taken this step uh,
Hmm.
well in advance, and obviously, but there is also a problem that I mean, obviously, this is something which an economist would be able to explain better. But there have been many uh, arguments about the fact that moving from the to the next level is going to be tough for Bangladesh, because it's sort of plateaued, because obviously
Mhm.
manufacturing of certain in
Right.
certain sectors it had beefed up, but now post COVID it needs to the economy also needs to reinvent itself, look at other
Mhm.
areas and so on.
Mhm. Right. And coming to the Middle East, there has been a development. Last month, Riyadh announced that it would open its airspace to all airlines, right? And opening Saudi airspace to flights and from Israel was a focus for US President Joe Biden's tour. But do you think that, there was also been talks about Joe Biden being a mediator between these two countries? So do you think that that is going around, that the airspace is open? And I think two flights have also overflown Saudi Arabia to Israel. So do you think that this is going to do something well, or promote the relationship between these two countries? Do you think it's going to?
This was anticipated. Now
Mhm.
the next step is going to be tough. So
Right.
something along the lines of the Abraham Accords as yet. Uh, I don't think that is going to be possible given the geopolitical situation. And the US, Biden has been pushing for that. But I
Right.
think, some normalization, and if Biden can show he's played a role in that, I think that would boost his uh,
Image. Yeah.
ratings, his
Yeah.
popularity ratings. And I would, and so that's one part of it. Second, Saudi and Israel, as we've been discussing in earlier shows, they have already been engaging. Uh,
Mhm.
in the economic sphere. Now, the two carriers which have gone so far, one is um
Mhm.
Cathay Pacific and one is Seychelles
Mhm.
Air,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Which have flown
Mm.
through Saudi airspace.
Right.
Even other countries also are going to benefit a lot by the fact, because this announcement was made, not actually, it was made for other countries as well, about opening up of its airspace. So economically it's going to benefit a number of other countries, but obviously in the Middle Eastern context it's about Saudi, Israel
Mhm.
ties.
Right.
Now,
Mm.
just to link this up to a couple of other issues we've discussed today, I think
Mm.
so. Biden is at a very interesting phase. On the one hand, obviously, the his ratings have been going down, but
Right.
he's been banking on two or three things. One is obviously on this normalization. Second is also, even if you look at what is happening in Taiwan right now. I mean, Pelosi's visit to Taiwan. Now, a lot of analysts have been critical of the move, but probably he is trying to position himself. He thinks that by being a bit more muscular and taking a tougher stance, it may boost
Right.
his ratings. And then, of
Also,
course,
Al Qaeda's leaders assassination, not assassination, I would
absolutely,
say.
absolutely,
Yeah.
even that also. So,
Yeah.
it's one thing to view issues from a singular lens, but as we've often said, that foreign policy is an
Mm.
extension of domestic policy. So, if you look
Right.
at the Saudi-Israel normalization, that would
Mm.
also help in terms of, so for instance, we've talked about Saudi increasing its oil production and all that. That would also benefit the US. Secondly, this would, in terms of symbolism, if he can show like Trump that he's done something, that
Mhm.
would be useful. Then uh, the other two developments which have happened, I think it just, again, it's symbolism about showing that basically you're in control. So he's trying
Right.
to probably change course in that sense, because there was also this uh, impression going about that, that he's indecisive, that he's not
Yeah.
going. So I think
Mm.
that could possibly witness a change. And I may also like to add that on the one hand, yes, countries have got more insecure, but the other
Mm.
question which you need to also ask is that the US allies, some of them, they would rather that the US is interventionist and takes wrong decisions than the
Right.
US being totally insular. I mean, it's
Correct.
not right. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm not getting into that.
Nonchalance is preferred over
Absolutely,
bad
absolutely,
decisions here.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes.
Right, right. So thank you so much for all the information that you've given us today. Thank you everyone for watching One India News. Do catch us again next week on Global Chit Chat.